If you want to be able to improvise great guitar solos, you actually don't have to have crazy chops like a George Benson or an Eddie Van Halen. All you really need to be able to do is to string together coherent ideas in succession that build on each other, and in a lot of ways, it's just like telling a good story. Like a story, it has to have a beginning that captures interest. It then needs to build tension through development of the initial ideas and end with some kind of resolution. So you definitely don't do this by running scales or playing random notes all willy-nilly and hoping that something cool happens. That is not a musical approach, and it's boring, and it will leave you feeling frustrated. So that would be the equivalent of writing a story by stringing random words together and hoping that they come out as something that has meaning, which is not a good approach. So the question is really, how do you make your ideas sound coherent? How do you structure an entire solo so that the whole thing sounds coherent? How can you make up musical phrases in the heat of the moment that are not random, but are also not fully planned out, so that they feel spontaneous and exciting? The answer to these questions is that by learning to use small musical ideas called motifs and changing them slightly as you move forward in time, you'll be able to create phrases that have a sense of cohesiveness. You need to change things up enough to make it interesting, but make the ideas similar enough so that the audience will be able to follow intuitively where you want to lead them. The key idea here is coherence. The ideas that you play need to make sense with one another. They also should make sense in the context of the song that you're playing. For example, if you quote the melody or a prominent musical riff that's present in the song, that will help to ground your improvisation to the song. This is where we're going to talk about two important concepts: motivic development and phrasing. I've touched on these ideas in some of my previous videos in this series, which I'll link to in the description, but today we're going to look at some very simple ways to think about these important concepts. And I'll provide some phrases that I came up with that you can practice, and then you can take them and expand on them on your own. I also have a backing track that I made for this lesson, and I'll be playing it out at the end of this lesson so that you can start with the basic phrases that I show you, and then you can use your own creativity to develop or change the ideas that I present, or to come up with your own ideas based on these concepts. So here's the full example for today's video, and after I play this, I'll go through and explain each part to help you understand better how I'm approaching it. So, the four-part phrases as we'll approach them today are in E minor using a Dorian sound, which is just a minor key with a raised sixth. This scale is used a lot in rock, blues, jazz, and funk, and other styles, and it's a good scale to feel comfortable with. We'll start with a simple motif as part one. So, the first motif goes like this. Maybe you notice a couple things about it. It's short, it's simple, and it's clear. It starts on beat 2, so it's 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2. It's made up of eighth notes, so it's a simple rhythm. but it's simple so that we can repeat it and build on it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to restate that phrase with a development. So part 2 is going to start the exact same way on beat 2. 1, 2. And all I've done is change the ending. Instead of going up, I went down. Notice how these phrases come together. They create an idea that it leaves it open for the next phrase to keep developing it. Very simple concept, but powerful. So phrase 1 and 2. 1. 1. So now we're going to move to part 3, which is a further development and extension of the motif. So starts the same. 1. So after I play the same beginning, I'm going to slide up to A, which is on the 10th fret of the 2nd string. And then I'm going to move back through the scale on the 2nd string. Part 3, I've used the same motif, but I've extended it a little bit. I've added a couple notes, and that creates a sense of forward motion that's bringing me towards the resolution that we'll find in part 4. So here is the final resolution. And I'm thinking of those 4 parts as one phrase. The final part resolves, and I resolved in the most simple way, which is by going back to the root note. You always want to resolve your phrasing. As you get better at this, you'll find interesting, surprising ways to resolve that. It doesn't always have to be the root note, but the root note is a great place to go to find that resolution because it's a very strong tone and it feels kind of like I've completed a sentence or a phrase. So the full phrase, all 4 parts, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 3, 4, 1. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. And as you're doing this, try to add some of your own flavor, add some of your own emotion to the notes. If you're just playing them mechanically, it's going to sound just kind of dead. If you add some flavor by, the way that you attack the note, the way you come off of the notes, the way that you add a vibrato, all of these things, the slides, they all add a little bit of flavor to create a more interesting and expressive type of sound. So expressiveness is really important, and a lot of that is just in your hands where you can make those decisions. I have my own, I'm trying to play it fairly plain right now, but I want you to know that you should be taking these ideas and messing with them, try them in different ways, add vibrato, try some different ways to add expressiveness to the phrases. I'm intentionally using patterns that utilize both the vertical and the horizontal dimensions of the guitar. And this is to help with one of the common problems that I see. And that problem is to be stuck in a single box or a scale pattern, in a vertical box, moving only this direction. Horizontal movement across a single string, when paired with string changes, helps to connect the patterns of the guitar in a more functional way. So for today's example, I'm changing between these different ways of moving across the neck. Okay, the second phrase we're going to play today is going to develop a very similar motif. It's going to start the exact same way as the first phrase, but we're just going to develop a little bit further here. And we're going to start at the 12th fret of the 2nd string, and it's going to start on beat 2 again. So 1, 2. I'm using these 3 notes, G, A, B, or the 8th fret, 10th fret, 12th fret, on the second string. So again, 1, 2, 3. Very simple again. Sounds a little bit like the first part of the first phrase. Then we're going to develop that a little further and have some motion going the other way. We'll start it the same way. So 1, 2. And so there's a pairing here between, just like the first phrase, part 1 and 2, there's a pairing here as well. 1, 4, 1. So there's a coherence there between those two phrases, and we're continuing the coherence that was there from phrase 1 to phrase 2. So now part 3 starts on beat 2 again. 1. I'll do that one more time. 1. And that last note could be part of the third part of this phrase or the last part. It's leading in, and so I've left less space here between parts 3 and 4 of this second phrase to lead me into part 4 of the phrase. So here's part 3 and 4 of the second phrase. 1. The full second phrase, here we go. 3, 4, 1. 4, 1. One. And that last phrase really brings it all together. We resolve back to the root note again to give it that strong sense of resolution. So while we changed positions, we're still remaining in the same key and scale, and we've kept some of the character of the first phrase but developed it further. It's possible to play an entire long solo utilizing similar or related motifs, and it can be more challenging than jumping from idea to idea. When you're soloing, you have the freedom to do whatever you want, but while you are learning to play in this way, it's super helpful to find a through line that keeps your phrases related to one another. So that's what I've tried to do in today's examples. So now we're going to take a look at the third phrase, and the third phrase is going to increase the rhythmic complexity slightly and offer a further development of this basic motif that we've been kind of developing through the first two phrases. So this is not going to start on beat 2 like we did before. It's going to start on the and of 1 with some 16th notes. So part 1 of the third phrase is this, 1. Now I'm using a position that I was using in the last one, but it's kind of this E minor scale right here, just the first 5 notes. I'll play that again. 1. Part 2 is going to again use the same beginning and then develop it just like we did in the previous 2 phrases that we went through. Here's part 2. 3, 4, 1. And some of this development is very similar to how we developed the second phrase, but now we've, as you can see, changed it slightly to keep the forward motion and development, but also to keep that coherence so that it sounds similar to the last idea. So parts 1 and 2 of the third phrase, 3, 4, 1. 1. The third part of this phrase into the fourth part is going to have less space because oftentimes with a 4-part phrasing like we're doing, you want to give a kind of forward development motion into the end of it so that it feels like you're moving towards completion of the phrase. And so that's what we're doing here. I'll play part 3 and then part 4 and then them together. So part 3, 1. We're utilizing some more 16th notes to create a higher energy. I'll do that part 3 again. 1. And this leads us into part 4 of this phrase, which will bring us to a conclusion. So part 4 is 1. Parts 3 and 4 now. 3, 4, 1. And now the full third phrase. Only one more to go after this. So here's the full third phrase. 3, 4, 1. I hope that you can kind of hear that coherence building throughout, hear that kind of building of the tension in, especially through the second and third parts of the phrase, and then that resolution in the fourth part of the phrase. So we've gone through phrases 1, 2, and 3, and now let's hit phrase 4, and then we'll play it all out together, and then the backing track so that you can just practice along and spend some time working on this 4-part phrasing concept. So phrase 4, we're going to increase the amount of notes, more 16th notes, to, again, step up the energy one more time. And this is our final phrase. So this is like, let's see, 8, 16. This is like a 32-bar solo that we're building. And so this is going to be the highest energy part before the whole thing concludes. So part 1 of phrase 4 goes like this. Starts on the end of 1 again. So 3, 4, 1. A couple things about this. I've started with a little minor third going from D, 10th fret of the first string, back to the 7th fret of the first string. And then I've played the A, the 10th fret on the second string, then the B, the 7th fret of the first string again, and then I'm playing the same note, but sliding into the second string on the same note. It's a great way to give some variation even when you're playing the same note, because we have lots of places that we can play the same note on guitar, so sliding into a new string is a nice way to give it a fresh sound. So part 2 is this. And we're developing the same idea, starting with the same thing, then resolving to a higher note, giving it that pairing like we did before in all the different phrases, kind of a downward motion, upward motion, a little bit different than phrase 1, but hopefully you can kind of see how that pairing of going up and then going down, or going down and then going up, gives it a sense of development and forward motion. So parts 1 and 2 of phrase 4, 3, 4, 1. One, 3, 4. Then part 3 of the phrase is again going to be extended a little more. So 3, 4, 1. I'll play that one more time. 1. And there's a little bit of sliding going on in the second string in this one. Starting the same exact way we started parts 1 and 2 of this phrase. sliding into that B note, 12th fret of the 2nd string. Then I'm playing this scalar pattern down and sliding on my 1st finger down to the F sharp, which is the 2nd note of the E Dorian scale. And closing out that part with a little run going 2, flat 3, 4, 2, 1. When speaking in scalar terms, it's the 7th fret, 8th fret, 10th fret, 7th fret, and then down to the E at the 9th fret of the 3rd string. And then the resolution, the final resolution of this phrase is a simple line starting on the end of 1 again, going 1 and 2. So parts 3 and 4, 3, 4, 1. 1. So the full 4th phrase is this: 3, 4, 1. One. So there in the 4th phrase, we have even more subdivision, but again, we're sticking to this 4-part phrasing pattern, keeping our ideas relevant to one another as we move through this solo. So to review, what I want you to take away from this is a clear systematic approach to creating your own phrases. Utilize this 4-part phrasing approach using the backing track at the end of this video, borrowing ideas from the phrases that I showed you, and then developing them on your own. If you ever feel lost when you're improvising, come back to your phrasing and development. Keep the 4-part structure in mind, which is to state a motif, develop that motif with some kind of slight alteration, develop it once again, allowing the 3rd phrase to venture a little further from the initial motif, then restate the motif in a way that resolves to a strong tone like the root note. This basic roadmap will help you start to think in the right way, and hopefully you'll be able to utilize it to improve your improvisation skills and to create your own great solos. Please take a look at my website through the link in the description if you want to download the free PDF that accompanies this video. And while you're there, you can sign up for the mailing list to receive a free course that I called Pentatonic Pathways that can help you master the different areas of the neck using pentatonic scales. I also have a course for sale called Guitar Synergy that is a deep dive into the foundational patterns of the guitar, focused on technical exercises that will open up your understanding of the fretboard through the primary chord shapes found on the neck. You can find that on my website for sale. So now I'm going to play the full 4-phrase exercise again, and then I'll have the backing track play out so that you can use it to practice along with. Thank you for your attention, and I hope that this has been helpful.